What? Yeah. Yep.
Six o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. If y'all would stand, we're going to do the pledge of allegiance before we start. Pledge of allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Yes, sir. Dear God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for its beauty. We thank you for creating it for us so that we can glorify you with our words and actions. God, we just ask that you would help guide our decision-making through this process and put the forefront of this community and our care for this community at the forefront of our minds and the decisions that we make. In your name we pray. Amen.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. We have a motion to approve the docket of claim numbers listed on your agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. We have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular mayor and board meeting of April 5th. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Clerk will have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Ross. Alderman Piper.
Aye.
Alderman Harris.
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller. Alderman Robinson. Alderman Wicker.
Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the personnel document? Motion to approve consent agenda. I got ahead of myself.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Now a motion on the personnel document.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next is to approve the donation docket.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Next, we have a group here from the Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Group, and we are going to approve a proclamation for them today. Ms. Lipman is here to speak on behalf of Blue and Green Day, I believe. If you'd like to come up to the podium and address the board. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth. I belong to the South Transplant Foundation, and I'm the hospital service coordinator. And what we do is we're the very organ-supported organization where we facilitate Eastern Arkansas, West Mississippi, and Northern Mississippi in ability to save lives. So April is our National Donation Life Month, and I brought some items here for Hernando to message.
Thank you.
I appreciate you having me.
Sure.
I brought my family here representing our Blue and Green.
Great.
Thank you.
And we've prepared an official proclamation. If you wish, I'll read it, and then we'll present it to you. So, whereas every year National Donate Life observes Blue and Green Day to amplify the importance of registering as an organ and tissue donor and encourage the public to wear blue and green to raise awareness, and whereas more than 106,000 Americans, including 4,000 in the Mid-South area, are currently on the National Transplant waiting list, and whereas another person is added to the waiting list every 10 minutes, and on average 20 people die every day because the organs they need are not donated in time. And whereas we can all do our part to save lives by educating and encouraging our peers and loved ones to register as an organ and tissue donor, and whereas the City of Hernando, Mississippi supports National Donate Life and Mid-South Transplant Foundation and its efforts to bring new life to men, women, and children in need of life-saving organ and tissue transplants, and whereas we hold those that have saved lives through the gift of donation in the highest regard and are grateful for their selflessness. Now, therefore, I, Chip Johnson, Mayor of Hernando, Mississippi, do hereby proclaim this 22nd day of April of 2022 in honor of Blue and Green Day Mid-South in the City of Hernando, and thus encourage all residents to promote the importance of organ and tissue donation. Can I have a motion to approve this proclamation by the board?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And today is officially going to be our April 22nd is going to be Blue and Green Day in Hernando. And I have the actual proclamation to send with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do. Okay, we're moving on to item number 11, the approval for Lee Germany to sign the water tank maintenance contracts with American Tank Maintenance for all water tanks. The contracts have been reviewed by the city attorney. Lee, would you like to come up and brief the board on what we're doing as we move forward and trying to make things a little better each time we meet?
Find my paperwork here. I got too much stuff going on. So as of right now, we currently have 5 tanks under contract, but we have other tanks that are not under contract that we purchased from North Mississippi Utilities. It's very important that we get those under contract as soon as possible. These contracts will do that.
When you say under contract, this is for the maintaining of them, the cleaning, the periodic cleaning, things
painting,
like that.
Coating, stuff like that. You want to kind of touch on that, or what's included in the maintenance contract?
So, under the maintenance program, we assume all the risk and liability for maintaining your tanks. We maintain over 950 tanks in the southeast. We've never had a maintenance program cancel. It covers all your inspections, washouts, visuals, emergency repairs, services, anything that comes up with regard to the water tank. Lee contacts us and we fix it. No charge to do that other than what you're paying for your annual fee. And then we also work in the future exteriors and interior renovations, which is basically saving you a lot of money over time in a proactive approach to maintenance. We have 5 tanks that are under maintenance right now, and we're able to convert you over to our program and save you. First year savings is $6,000. When you compare our fees against what you're currently paying, we're going to show you 12-year savings of $250,000. That's on the 5 that are under contract right now. The other 4 of the 4 tanks that have not been touched since you purchased them, they're all in very, very poor condition. They need to be renovated, and we save you a significant amount of money on each one of those tanks as well. To put them under maintenance, again, we assume all the risk and liability. Lifetime warranty as long as you're on the program. If the coatings fail for some reason, it's our responsibility to come back and clean those, okay? So there's a lot of numbers here, but we're saving you a significant amount of money when you start looking at there's the 5 tanks and then there's the 4, so you have a total of 9. So the maintenance program is going to save you a lot of money over time and protect your assets and keep them in good working condition.
And since I've started, me and Massey and Neil have been working on this nonstop, trying to get this pushed through, get the numbers to line up, waiting on contracts to run out so we can sign with them. So they're an American-owned company. I don't know if you mentioned that. The current company we have is a French-owned company. Nothing wrong with the French. They're just not here. So,
once they're are all 9 of them going to be on the same schedule? And what is that schedule for maintaining them? Like every
so they won't
2-3 years?
Schedule because each tank has a different kind of life expectancy as far as when they were painted last, the current conditions of the tank. Some tanks are going to get painted in year 1. Some tanks are scheduled for year 3. Sometimes the exteriors and interiors are split up. So it's all going to be a different schedule. But generally speaking, a tank gets a renovation on the exterior every 8 to 10 years, interior every 10 to 12. The advantage of doing that is we're maintaining the adhesion and cohesion qualities of the coatings so that you don't get in a scenario where you have to blast the tank down to bare metal, which becomes very, very expensive. So this is going to save $1 million.
So you're draining these full water tanks to do the interior?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we had discussed all that.
We do washout inspections. Those get drained for the washout. That's done every other year. But when it comes time for an interior renovation, that's a major project, and it gets drained, and it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks if that tank is down while it's being renovated.
So will the North Mississippi tanks be repainted with Hernando? Is that in the beginning of this contract, or?
Yes, ma'am. 2 of those tanks need to be done immediately. They're in very, very poor condition.
Yeah, I think what she's asking is, will you repaint a new name on there where it'll say Hernando instead of North Mississippi Utilities? Yeah, that's a good point.
It'll become Hernando tank.
Okay.
I would like there to be a discussion item later on what's the name going to be on those tanks, and just saying generic going to be Hernando, because I think some of us want something else on some of them tanks.
We talked about a tiger being on there.
Well, there again,
Yes, can we get that?
I got a tag in my tank, but still low.
I mean,
I'm talking serious, on a serious note.
People have a block letter of your name, they have flags. I've seen entire tanks be painted as far as,
So what we can do is, as they come up for the schedule to paint the exterior, then we'll talk about each one.
We'll determine at the time who we're going to put on.
Absolutely.
And the only thing that I will say, just to be very transparent, is everything's priced based on block letters that says Hernando or what's there now.
Yeah.
If you change it, there might be a slight modification, but it's not going to be a major one. Depending on how glamorous you get. I mean, if you turn it in from Hernando to the city of Hernando in person, I mean, it's going to be reasonable. If you decide to paint the whole tank as, the color of a flag, it's going to be a little more expensive. But I mean, we can negotiate that. As you said, when the tanks become due, like the big tank on 55 is going to be due pretty soon. Right now, it's scheduled to have what's on there now. But if we can change that, we can negotiate all that.
Okay.
We do this all the time as far as updating logos.
Do we have lighting on those tanks currently? So like at night, if there was something on there, you would be able to see it at nighttime?
I don't believe so. I think we just have the red light on top.
Okay.
Now, I will say, not to muddy the waters anymore, that can be done.
Right.
It's been done in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. We've done it in some other cities where it's uplighting, but it has to be done properly. And I don't want to say it's extensive, but there's some work that's involved to do it. You can't uplight it from the ground properly. It has to be done from the balconies.
Yeah, I feel like I saw y'all at the MML conference last summer, and there were some examples like that looked really nice. It was something that's really prominent, like the one on 55 would maybe benefit from something like that, but we can discuss that at a later date, obviously.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, the former mayor of Tunica happened to see our agenda on my Facebook page, and he sent me a message saying that he had used y'all and y'all were good people, so he gave a good recommendation for this company as well.
Just like we're converting you over from another vendor.
Right.
And I'm retired Navy, just like he is.
Yep.
And I hear you are too.
Yep.
We're going to even hire you even regardless.
This is our Army veteran over here.
I carry a lot of Army guys around.
So the 5 tanks, of course, that we've already got budgeted for this year would be covered now. The 4 tanks that are not on our maintenance contract, that would pick up under next year's budget. So we would have to budget for that next year.
And the way the contracts, I don't even call them contracts or agreements, the way they're written is, upon signature, we start service. And on those new tanks, we would start coverage. So something happens between now and October 1st, but we don't start any major work until October 1st, where it falls in the budget cycle. But coverage would start on all tanks.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any citizens have a question on this item? If not, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Some motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you, Lee. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you.
Okay, item 12 is a planning item. BJ, come on up.
Yes, this will be the last time that I do all of them. Anyway, this is an item to rezone 0.40 acres from R10 residential single-family district medium density to R8 residential single-family district medium density. Basically, I think where I'd like to start on this one, if you will turn with me to the aerial photograph, you will see that we have the area that's being rezoned blocked out in red, and but that's not the limits of the property. Okay? What this is, you have 2 narrow through to Valley Street. Okay? Now, most of it is commercial, C2, and there's a commercial building on that property. This is vacant property behind that commercial building that fronts on Valley Street. So in addition to this rezoning that we're speaking of this evening, later on, we'll be addressing a subdivision to create the lots, because it'll be dividing this property off from the commercial property. Okay. Essentially, this rezoning was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on February 8th, 2022, and at that time, they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezoning to the Board of Aldermen. Okay? I have given you the applicant's responses to the 3 criteria necessary for a rezoning. I have also given you a proposed motion for approval with appropriate findings and a motion for denial with appropriate findings. And of course, you have the option of tabling the item if you feel like you need additional information or additional time to review the application. Now, the only other thing I would mention on this, which I think the applicant is going to go into in a little bit more detail, after the Planning Commission met, the applicant did some further engineering on the property, and they found that in order to create 8,000 square foot lots on this property, that the rear property line would have to come within 5 feet of the rear wall of that commercial building. Okay? And currently there's a drive that runs around the backside of that building, and of course that would put the property line, you know, well into that, you know, driveway. They're going to ask you, I believe, to amend their request to allow them to apply for PUD zoning for this property. Essentially because that's what the comprehensive plan currently recommends for this area is PUD. So it would be something in conformance with the plan. What they are asking is that you approve the PUD zoning and allow them to come back at a later date, you know, with a plan and project text. Now, the thing to kind of keep in mind about this, I might be a little bit reluctant in mentioning this to you if it were a very complex project, but essentially the applicant wants to create 2 lots, build 2 single-family detached houses, and that's it. It'll just require them to take an extra step. And of course, as a PUD, you know, the PUD is the most restrictive district that we have, because the board literally approves everything. You know, you approve lot sizes, the setbacks, you know, what uses are allowed there, what the buildings look like, you know, if there has to be landscaping or whatever, you know, so it, you know, basically would go from what they're requesting, which is R8, to a more restrictive residential district. So with that, you know, I'll leave off my report, see if anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions for BJ on this? I'm sure most of y'all have driven by and seen the site, know where he's talking about.
I understand they've amended their request to go from R10 to a PUD.
That's
correct?
my understanding, but
Okay.
I'll let the applicant make that request.
Okay.
And the nuts and bolts of that are you just can't fit a 10,000 square foot lot there without it being too close to the commercial building.
Well, even an 8,000 square foot
Right,
lot,
okay.
yes.
Any other questions? If not, did the applicant want to speak?
Good evening. My name's Greg Smith with Mendrop Engineering. It's good to be with y'all tonight. Appreciate you having me. Just to go back, without belaboring it too much, I'll go back through some background on this. We did request an R8 originally. After doing the survey and looking exactly where the old Fred's building was, in order to accomplish that, like Mr. Page said, we would have to set the rear line 5 feet off that building, which is just unacceptable from my standpoint and yours as well. So what we done, we went back and said, well, what zoning would both meet the comprehensive plan and allow us to do what we'd like to do on that property, and that would be the PUD zoning, which would allow us to set that property line, the required 20 feet off that building, and have lots that was just barely under 8,000, but not 8,000. That's why we're doing this, because we couldn't have the R8 zoning and have lots under 8,000 square feet. And that's simply all we want to do, is have 2 lots fronting on Valley Street there, West Valley, I believe it is. And in order to do that, I think this is the best way to do it. And as Mr. Page said, the comprehensive plan calls for that area to be zoned PUD, and that's what we've requested here. That's why we've amended, one of the reasons we've amended the zoning. And I think we've answered all the questions. The questions and answers did not change significantly on that, but I can go through that if you'd like me to, or if you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them at this time.
When do you think you would bring back the text of the PUD for
Probably
approval?
just as soon as I could get it drawn, the next filing deadline, which would be the Friday after the second Tuesday of next month.
Okay. Would that need to go back before the Planning Commission before it comes to us again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or concerns? Is anyone else here to speak for or against the application? BJ, do you have anything to add before we? Okay.
Unless anybody has any questions.
So is there a motion to allow the rezoning to PUD?
Yeah, I'd make a motion. Do I need to read this whole thing, or?
Probably.
Make a motion to recommend approval of rezoning request by Mr. Greg Smith on behalf of Miller Farms LLC, owner of the property, 0.4 acres, identified as parcel numbers 3086130010012700 and 307418002005100, located at the south side of East Valley Street, east of Northview Street, and west of Northern Street, Section 13 and 18, Township 3 South, Range 7 and 8 West, from the current zone in R10 residential single family to a PUD, based upon the following findings 1 through 3.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you. BJ, do you want to move on to item 13 for us?
All right, this is a final plat for Clark Estates, which is a 2-lot subdivision with 4.98 total acres. It's located on the north side of West Oak Grove Road, west of Fletcher Street, and east of Scott Road in Section 14, 3 South, Range 8 West. I would note in the staff report, under the introduction, it does give the wrong directions for the location of the property, but we have already corrected that on the electronic version of the staff report that will wind up in your minutes at the next meeting. So that has been corrected. Basically, Lot 1 will consist of 3.36 acres, Lot 2 will consist of 1.62 acres. Lot 1 will contain 1 single-family residential structure and a barn, while Lot 2 is vacant. Each lot will have direct access to West Oak Grove Road and access to centralized water and sewer services. The lots are currently zoned A Agricultural District, and the lots would, of course, meet all of those requirements for the agricultural zoning district. The subdivision is outside of any flood hazard zone or flood area. We have an address, of course, on the existing building at this time. The Planning Commission reviewed this request for final plat approval at their meeting on April 12, 2022, and found that the submitted final plat generally conformed to the requirements of the subdivision regulations and voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the final plat, subject to the conditions listed in the proposed motion that I have given you in the staff report. I would note that the plat itself needs to be revised. In the title block, we need to add the zoning district. We need to correct within the title block, there's a reference to range 9 west, and it should be range 8 west. We need to revise the mortgagee certificates to use our current wording, and we need to revise the notes on the face of the plat to reflect that there's a 5-foot wide utility easement on the side property lines. The rest of the conditions listed are our standard subdivision conditions. So with that, that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
I have some questions about the standard subdivision things. Because this is such a small area, do they need the requirements of the sidewalk and streetlights and mailboxes and stuff like that? Like specifically 4, 6, and 10?
Well, that's entirely up to the board. You know, we have discussed this, you know, in the past, of course. There are going to be, you know, under our subdivision regulations, it requires, you know, all public improvements for all subdivisions, okay? But that doesn't mean that they necessarily make sense in all subdivisions. So it's really up to the board as to, you know, what items they may wish to waive or keep.
I think number 6 for certain, there are already a series of streetlights through there. And so I don't think we need to belay that one, belabor it, I should say. But and if somebody wants a street light there at some point in the future, we'll just have Entergy add one. There's no cost really.
I guess I was just, the sidewalk really, I mean, it's, I think the future plan is to have sidewalks along
the south side.
South side of Oak Grove. So this would almost be just a small section that wouldn't really go anywhere.
Okay.
There, no. And I would like to bring, if this passes, I do want staff to be aware that maybe the house that's already there, but at least one of those houses has an undersized driveway culvert, and it's causing flooding across the street. So when the new driveway culvert goes in, let's make sure that Joe Frank approves the size of it, so we're not replacing it immediately. Anyone want to make a motion with conditions or conditions removed?
I got a question. You're requiring them to tie into the sewer, city sewer?
Is the existing house tied into city sewer? The one that's there?
I don't think it is.
No,
It's not.
but it could be.
Where is the sewer there, Joe?
Across the road.
Okay. I would almost definitely say that if a new house is built on the other lot, it would need to tie into city sewer since it's available across the street. I think it could be debatable what to do about the existing house. What are your recommendations?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up about the culvert there being too small. Needs to be replaced. But I think they need to be on the city sewer.
Joe, could they share the same service under the road?
Yep.
Just have
Share.
a Y out?
Any other questions? Or a motion?
I make a motion to grant final plat approval for Clark Estates 2 lots, 4.89 acres located in the southeast quarter of Section 14, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, based upon a finding that the submitted final plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city's code and ordinances subject to the following conditions: 1, A through D, 2, 3, 4, with the omission of sidewalks, 5, and 7 through 10.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. All right, BJ, you want to move on to item 14 for us?
Sure. Okay, this is also a final plat approval for the re-subdivision of Lot 1 of Phase 5B of the first revision of Lee's Summit PUD into 4 lots. It's currently a 10-acre piece of property, and of course it's located right there on the corner of Monteith and McInvale. Basically, the way the subdivision is designed, you'll have 3 lots that front on McInvale, and then a 6-acre lot that lies behind those frontage lots and has frontage on Monteith. Okay, the subdivision also provides for a cul-de-sac that will run behind the 3 frontage lots, as well as down the side of the lot on Monteith. The reason for this is because in the original project text for the Lee Summit PUD, it requires that there only be 1 access on McInvale for this property and 1 access on Monteith. So I'm sure that the purpose behind the cul-de-sac is to provide alternative access points for the lots, to access those properties. Basically, lots 1 and 2 will each consist of 1.10 acres, while lot 3 will consist of 1.20 acres. And as I mentioned before, lot 4 will consist of 6 acres. Of course, all of the lots have access, to Monteith and McInvale through those joint access points, as well as the internal, as of yet unnamed cul-de-sac. Basically, they have access also to water and sewer services. As designed, the lots will meet all of the yard requirements for this area of the PUD, and I've listed them for you there in your staff report. The project text for the Lee Summit PUD also calls for a 30-foot wide, non-disturbed landscape easement along both the east and south property lines of the development, including a 6-foot tall wooden fence with brick columns every 40 feet on center. Because these buffer yards are non-disturb in nature, they are also exclusive of utility easements. In other words, the utility easement has to be outside the 30-foot buffer. Okay, so you'd have the 30-foot buffer, and then you'd have the 10-foot utility easement. All of the lots are of sufficient size to meet these development requirements as established by the PUD project text. And I've noted for you in the staff comments a couple of things. The plat does not accurately reflect these buffer yards, so that's something that will need to be corrected. Since the PUD text permits only 1 joint access for all 3 of the frontage lots on McInvale, there probably should be some cross-access easements, for those lots. The Planning Commission reviewed this request for final plat approval at their meeting on March 8, 2022, finding that the submitted final plat generally conformed to the approved preliminary site plan and the requirements of the subdivision regulations. The Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen of the final plat, subject to the conditions that I have listed for you under the proposed motion. Under item 1, We need to revise the title. It currently, talks about this being Lot 5B. Well, it's actually Phase 5B. The adjoining church is Phase 5A, and I included in your staff report a page from the project text that gives a description of those original phases, and it identifies them actually as Lot 1 and 2, as well as Phase 5A and 5B. So the title needs to be corrected to reflect that this is a re-subdivision of Lot 1 of Phase 5B. We need to revise the plat to identify the 30-foot wide buffer yard. We need to either remove the shaded area reflected along the eastern boundary or extend it to the full 30-foot of width and north to Monteith as reflected in the approved project text. We also need to reflect the 30-foot wide no disturb buffer yard along the entire southern boundary line. Need to revise the plat drawing to reflect the associated utility easements as being outside of the buffer yard, not as being inside the buffer yard. Revise the plat drawing to reflect cross-access easements. Revise the owners and mortgagee certificates to use our current wording. And then, of course, items 2 through 10 are standard subdivision conditions. That's my report, in case anyone has any questions.
Any questions from the board? Is there anyone here from the public to speak for or against this application? Might have anything to add or a motion?
Just to be clear, this is essentially designating these 4 lots within the PUD.
Yes. It's like it basically re-subdivides Phase 5B into these 4 lots.
So any businesses that would want to locate would have to submit an application to the Planning Commission for development, or how does that process work?
Basically, it would go through our certificate of development process, which is where we review it for compliance with our design standards ordinance.
But if it falls within the category, they can build anything they want.
Well, as long as it's in the list of permitted uses, yes. But, just to be clear, that's true whether it's subdivided or not. I mean, if somebody wanted to buy that 10 acres and use it for something on the permitted use list, they could move forward with that. Things stand. They still have to get a plat approval, but, at this point in time, it's already zoned and use list is established. What can be placed there. One thing about the Lee Summit project text, and this is just something to kind of keep in mind in terms of future PUDs that you might review, there is no conditional use list. In other words, everything is considered permitted. So there is no subsequent approval of any particular use on that list. But it was approved, years ago, and that's the way people looked at things then.
I mean, I know legally we can't tell anybody what they can and can't put on a piece of property if it falls within the guidelines.
Right.
That's just my worries.
I understand.
With this one specific location.
But I think at the same time, at least I think under the original project text approval, I think there was some consideration, because of the requirements that they included for the 30-foot no disturb buffer yard area, which includes, a 6-foot, fence with brick, columns every 40 feet that run all the way along the southern boundary and all along the eastern boundary. Okay. And of course, anything that develops on the frontage will also be separated, at least, to development to the east by that big 6 acre parcel. in between. So, I think in terms of, generally speaking, I'm not a real estate person, but I would think what you might call more intense commercial uses would probably be looking at the frontage lots, and less intense uses, will be that Monteith property back behind, because they won't have the visibility. It would have to be something that you would want, that you specifically would want to be going to, as opposed to something you would just see and go to.
Any other questions or concerns? Is there a motion?
Make a motion. Make a motion to grant final plat approval to the re-subdivision of Lot 1 of Phase 5B of the first revision of Lee Summit PUD, 4 lots, 10 total acres, located on the southeast corner of McInville Road and Monteith Avenue in Section 17, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, based upon the finding that the submitted plat generally conform to the requirements of the city codes and ordinance, subject to the following conditions, which are listed 1 through 10.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Okay, BJ, item number 15, PL-1607.
Okay, this is final plat approval for Trans Development Commercial Subdivision. This is a one-lot subdivision, 4.52 acres, located up on the northeast corner of U.S. Highway 51 and Green T in Section 1, Township 3, Range 8 West. Basically, this is another one of those situations where, this property is zoned C2 commercial, and some folks were looking at developing a convenience store there. And as we got into the process of the certificate of development approval, that's when we found that the lot had never been approved. In other words, never been platted and recorded. And of course, under our ordinance, we can't issue a building permit unless the property has been approved, okay? So that's the purpose of this subdivision plat, to get a plat recorded so that they can move forward with their construction project. Basically, being 4.52 acres in size, it's bigger than, greater than, wider than anything in C2 highway, that will clearly meet all of the requirements for that zoning district. Planning Commission reviewed this request for final plat approval at their meeting on April 12, 2022, finding that the submitted final plat generally conformed to the requirements of the subdivision regulations. Therefore, the Commission voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the final plat, subject to certain specified conditions, which I've listed in the proposed motion. Under item 1, we need to revise the owners and mortgagees certificates to use the city's current wording relative to the dedication of roads and utility easements. We need to identify the lot as Lot 1, and we need to complete the reference to the section corner tie-in note. And then, of course, from 2 to 10 is just our standard subdivision conditions. That's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions of BJ? Is there anyone here to speak for or against this application? If not, can I have a motion?
Motion to grant final plat approval to the Trans Development Commercial Subdivision 1 Lot, 4.52 acres, located on the northeast corner of the U.S. Highway 51 and Green Tea Road in Section 1, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, based upon a finding that the submitted plat generally conforms to the requirements of City Code and Ordinance, subject to the following conditions: 1, A through C, and 2 through 10.
Second the motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion passes. I've gotten word that item 16, the applicant has asked us to table it so they can do some clarifying work. So can I have a motion to table item 16?
Motion to table.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 17, BJ.
Okay. This next item is final plat approval for Douglas Estate Consolidation Plat, which combines 3 lots into 1 lot of a total of 0.36 acres. Basically, this is kind of a subdivision in reverse, you might say, in that this piece of property is part of an estate that was divided by court order into 3 pieces that went to various heirs of the estate. Okay? Since that happened, Dale Wilson has purchased the 3 separate pieces, and he wishes to consolidate those 3 pieces back into the original lot. And so that is the purpose of our subdivision plat that we are looking at in this application. The property is currently zoned C2 Highway Commercial District, and the property should meet those requirements. However, I fully expect that we will probably see a variance application of some form because the property is bounded on 3 sides by streets. And since the front yard setback for the C2 district is 50 feet, that would be 50 feet on 3 sides. And since it's only a 0.36 acre piece of property to begin with, I expect that in order to make any kind of really productive use of the property, we'll probably be looking at some kind of variance when that, and of course it's vacant now. I failed to mention that. There were some buildings on there, they've all been removed, so it'll be some kind of new construction that we'll be looking at. Planning Commission reviewed this at their meeting on April 12th, 2022, found that the submitted plat generally conformed to the requirements of the subdivision regulations. Therefore, the commission voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the final plat subject to the conditions that are included in your proposed motion. I would note under item A, revise the plat drawing to include the section corner tie-in, revise the plat drawing to correct note number 5 to state that the utility easement along the rear property line of the lot is 10 feet wide, not 5. Adjust the plat drawing to reflect the utility easements to the proper scale. Revise the plat drawing to include a mortgagee certificate if necessary. And revise the owner and mortgagee certificates to use our current wording for the dedication of road right-of-ways and utility easements. And outside of that, it is our standard subdivision conditions. That's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Anyone here to speak for or against the application? I have a motion from the board.
Motion to grant final plat approval for the Douglas Estate Consolidation Plat, combining 3 existing lots into a single lot on total acreage of 0.36 acres located in the southwest corner of East Commerce Street and Ice Plant Lane, Section 18, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, based upon a finding that the submitted plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city's code and ordinances, subject to the following conditions: A through D, and B through I.
Sorry about that.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Next is item 18. BJ?
Okay. This is the final plat approval for Phase 12 of the Nesbitt Industrial Park, 3 lots, 6.41 total acres, located at the southern terminus of Nesbitt Drive. Basically, it's 3 lots, one of which is the proposed location for the new animal shelter. So that, in a sense, is the purpose of this plat, so that we can get that lot recorded, so that we can issue ourselves a building permit for that purpose. Basically, the Planning Commission reviewed this at their meeting on April the 12th. They found that it generally conformed to the requirements of the subdivision regulations. They voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the plat, subject to the conditions that I have listed for you in the proposed motion. Under item 1, we need to revise the plat to include the title block of the plat, the total acreage, revise the owner's and mortgagee certificates to use our current wording, revise the plat to reflect a 10-foot wide utility easement at the front and rear property lines and 5-foot utility easements on the side property lines, and revise in the notes on the face of the plat that there are 10-foot wide utility easements on the front and rear property lines. Other than that, the remainder of the conditions are standard subdivision conditions. That's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions or concerns from anyone? Can I have a motion?
Motion to grant final plat approval for Phase 12 of Nesbit Industrial Park, 3 lots, 6.41 acres, located on the southern terminus of Nesbit Drive, south of Nesbit Road, west of U.S. Highway 51, and east of Gwin Road in Section 25, Township 2 South, Range 8 West, based upon a finding that the submitted final plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city's code and ordinances, subject to the following conditions: 1, A through D, and 2 through 10.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderman Harris.
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Nay.
Alderman Robinson.
Aye.
Alderman Wicker.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ross.
Aye.
Alderman Piper.
And the motion passed. Next, we'll be moving on to item number 19. Thank you, BJ. The request for the board to approve grant funding from Entergy through the micro grant program in the amount of $500 to be used towards movie night in October within the Parks Department.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. At the last board meeting, we were approving a contract for a concessionaire, and the board had kind of asked Jared to look into adding an additional one, so that's what we're doing here. The approval to enter into an agreement with Southern Taco Bar to sell concessions at the Hernando Civic Center during youth baseball, youth softball, and t-ball games for the spring 2022 season. That agreement has been reviewed by the city attorney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
If there's one thing Hernando needs, it's more tacos.
That's right.
Definitely
Absolutely.
wise choice.
That's going to be a good one.
Yep.
Item 21 is the approval to enter into the interlocal agreement with DeSoto County Sheriff's Department to purchase surplus property totaling $23,045.96 for the police department. The agreement has been reviewed by the city attorney. This is a win-win. DeSoto County had some stuff they weren't going to be able to use, and we can use it. So we bought it at a little bit of a discount, and we both helped each other with that, if y'all approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderman Wicker.
Same.
Alderwoman Ross.
Aye.
Alderman Piper.
Aye.
Alderman Harris.
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Robinson.
Aye.
And the motion passed. Next, we had added this one to the agenda because I know we're trying to move forward as quickly as we can on getting some of our paving projects done, including the soccer parking lot. And Joe Lauderdale had come up with 2 quotes for the actual curbing, which has to be done before the paving. So he wanted to present those to you and ask you to accept the low and best quote.
Okay. Did receive 2 quotes. The lowest quote is from Williams Concrete, $40,550.
What'd you say, 40?
Would you repeat that, please? The amount? $40,550.
And that's Williams Concrete?
Williams Concrete.
All right.
Is that for the whole parking lot?
That's the first phase.
So that'll be the curb and gutter around the edges and,
That goes all the way past the concession stands.
yeah. And it'll also do the cutouts for that meet our design standards every 10 parking spaces where you have a planted area. So it's quite a bit of curbing.
and the grass areas you come in on the right.
Okay.
So we're talking about in excess now over $400,000.
Sir?
Phase one total now, what's the total cost of that project? We talking about total $400,000?
Hang on a minute.
I think it's gonna be close to 300.
I thought the total project was,
We haven't bid out we hadn't gotten the bids back on the asphalt yet, so we don't know for sure.
so, well, we're still talking about a over $400-some thousand project.
For the entire facility,
Now for this phase, the first phase.
first phase?
First phase, let's talk about it.
I don't think so.
I thought the original numbers were 300.
That's what I'm saying, it was 300 plus, we're talking about 49, we ain't got the cost back yet. And cost is going up, they ain't going down.
When are you gonna bid the asphalt?
Next thing I'm gonna try to bid is soil cement. Got some dirt work to do, then finally the asphalt.
Okay.
The asphalt guys are so busy right now, I can't hardly get a bid from anybody.
But your estimate is still the whole thing will be around 300,000?
I'm thinking unless something really happens that I
For
don't
the
know
first
about.
for the first phase.
Yeah.
That's first phase,
Yeah.
Right.
but we got $40,000 we didn't know before until the night.
Right.
So it's already at 3, but we ain't gonna be over 3. The number don't add up. It was already 3, and we just added 40, but it's gonna be around 3. Come on, man.
I think we had always assumed in the design it was gonna have curb and gutter.
Yeah, had to have that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about his number that he gave us the first time was around 300 or something, right?
And you.
This is 40 was not in there. I'm asking you now. Was this 40 in that number?
Okay.
That's what I need
I
to know.
think
Yes or no?
I think you want me to try to come up with an area that would cost about 300,000. So I'm trying to stay within the 300,000.
That's why you did this first phase smaller than the entire project.
That's right.
To stay, so you're, okay.
Trying to stay within that 300,000.
And so that will include the concrete, the asphalt, and the dirt work involved?
That's right. Soil cement.
I think earlier this month that in the packet that we had, there was a kind of a drawing of phase one.
Right.
That showed kind of what, I know I don't have it with me today, but that was it's the entrance area, an additional parking lot to the right when you first come in, correct?
Correct.
As you go back, and then you go to the right past the concession stands, and then go alongside to that corner, I think, that next turn.
Does that include the striping of the spaces?
It does. I'm trying to work with you 300,000, see?
Just curious, what was the other bid?
Sir?
Just curious, what was the other bid?
$50,084. Mid-South curb and gutter.
Any other questions or concerns? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the lowest and best quote of $40,550 from Williams Concrete.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Roll call.
We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderman Robinson.
Aye.
Alderman Wicker.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ross.
Aye.
Alderman Piper.
Aye.
Alderman Harris.
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Nay.
And the motion passes. Item 23, a few months back, the Anderson family came to us and talked to me and Stephen, our attorney, about a voluntary annexation. They want their property to be in the city. So that's what you have in front of you, and I think Billy Myers may be here, who's maybe representing a part of that group.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Bill Myers with Myers Law Group, PLLC, 1615 Cedar Lake Circle, Hernando, Mississippi. I'm here on behalf of the potential purchaser of the Anderson property, which is located just south of I-269, west of Getwell Road, and extends all the way down to by Hellier Road. It's intended for PUD-type development at some point in the future. We'd like to do that through the city. The Anderson family, it's Tallulah and Sharon, own the property and have asked us to bring it into the city in voluntary annexation. The ordinance that's presented to you tonight is a standard annexation ordinance. You've seen them before. There's nothing special about it. The best part about it is that it will cost the city nothing. The developer of this property has agreed to pay the cost of taking it through the legal process with the Chancery Court.
And if our city attorney has to be involved in that, they'll be able to pay him his fees on that as
That's
well.
right. We'll cover the cost of that. The property is vacant right now, so there's no resident there to bring the suit, so it has to come through the name of the city of Hernando to bring it into the city.
Any questions or concerns? Is there anyone, any citizen here to speak for or against this application? Okay. I feel like it's fairly cut and dry. We have a parcel that will probably be property and sales tax producing in the next few years, and they're asking to come into the city so we can oversee the approvals on the development, which I think gives us a little more control there. So I think it's probably appropriate for us to annex that so we can keep that moving along at the way the city of Hernando wants it to develop.
The development's been informally presented to your planning commission already for feedback, so we're making sure that what we're bringing forward once it's annexed into the city is what the city desires and what would be beneficial to both the development and to the city.
If there are no questions, is there a motion?
So this does not include the cemetery at the corner, correct?
Does not.
Okay.
Are we sure it doesn't?
What?
I think it goes around it, doesn't
It includes the
It
cemetery.
includes cemetery.
it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, misspoke.
Okay.
Yep.
That's going to stay though, isn't it? That's going to stay
The Anderson
preserved.
family does not own the cemetery.
Right.
Okay.
It's owned by separate. But it is
It's-
included in the description.
But if it's owned by someone else with a request for annexation, wouldn't they have to be party to that too if it's different ownership, Mr. Meyer?
They'll be named and
Not that.
served with the,
At the phase we're at tonight, with the request by the Anderson family, which I'm in agreement with, but also, and now you yield to my attorney here, so we got two attorneys, that you got two owners. So are both owners requesting, since it's in the description, so, and it's appropriate that both owners make the request at the same time? Because we cannot approve a request that was not made by the owner. Then it'll be involuntary annexation. Correct? I'm not a lawyer, but y'all two are, so. Thank you, Mr. Piper.
Are you representing both owners?
I represent the developer of the property with the
Both owners.
authority of the Anderson property owners to voluntarily annex their property into the city. I think they have some interest in that cemetery. I know we've had some issues there before. I don't know.
I guess Mr. Miller's question is are all the owners on board with the annexation?
As far as I know, I haven't spoken with the owner of the cemetery, and I'm not sure I know who the owner of the cemetery is. That's
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows. So it could be
That's
that we
right.
just proceed with the annexation, and if someone objects, they object.
That's right. They have a right to object. Anyone does. What we're asking the board tonight is to adopt the annexation ordinance and let us move forward with the lawsuit to bring that property into the city. If there are objections, then we deal with that in the courtroom.
Yeah, I think that process would be taken, as far as notice, would be taken care of through the process.
That's
I'm
right.
sure there are
Christian church.
restrictions on disturbing the cemetery itself. think it would have to stay where it is.
Yeah, we won't be touching the cemetery, I promise you that.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, is there a motion to allow the lawsuit for an annexation to move forward?
I make a motion to approve the lawsuit to move forward with the annexation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Okay, at the last board meeting, we had talked about, we just started a discussion about the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act, and tonight we will continue that discussion. I know we had heard a webinar where they had talked about the PDDs being able to draw us a map showing where the 1,000 feet distances were and 1,500 feet distances and so on and so forth. And we did not get that to happen. However, Austin did us a few quick maps, and I think the circles you're seeing are 1,500 foot circles when they probably should be 1,000 foot circles in accordance with the ordinance. But if there's any area you want to see, he can bring it up on the GIS, draw a circle around it for us very quickly so people can see where retailers would be allowed, where they would not be allowed if we just leave things as they are. So we have that ability tonight, and if anybody wants to just start a general discussion on this board, voice their opinions and concerns, I would take those comments now.
I definitely appreciate the work on these maps because it addressed one of the concerns I had, which was around the historic district and the square, their proximity to funeral homes and churches probably would limit their ability to have those retailers in that area. I do appreciate the work on that.
I will say that today, Austin Cardosi, our new planner, the city attorney and I met and discussed some what ifs, some drawbacks possibly, or things of that nature. And we brought up the historic district, and during that discussion, we were just saying, well, what's that look like? And that's when he drew some of these maps for us with the circles around them. But out of that conversation on the historic district came the thought that we still have, let's just say that we don't take any action tonight and we're opted in automatically. We still have the ability to put some rules in place on our zoning before the first permits are issued, which would be June or July. It's not coming immediately. So if we have some concerns about zoning, we could do a little bit of that work with instruction from this board. We could properly notice and advertise and get that work done before the first permits were issued. So that's just something that we talked about in that meeting. So there are many different options that we can take. So
if we did do any sort of zoning things, what is the proper notice, 30 days?
Austin and Stephen?
Yes, ma'am. So we'd amend the ordinance to, at a bare minimum, add definitions and then add in the use chart where these can and cannot go. And so a 15-day notice just to amend the text is what would be required.
15? Okay.
And we can do that after May 2nd.
Based on your decision tonight, I can move in that direction, bring it back at the next meeting.
You can do it afterwards, but you should move promptly in May, probably.
So if we do nothing, we're opted in, which everyone's opted in, and we can still make those concessions.
Yes, ma'am. Change which commercial zones you'd like them in, exclude the historic district. But if we're opted in, my recommendation would be to, at a minimum, add definitions of, as in accordance with the Department of Health, what these definitions are and where they fit in our ordinance.
And when are the first licenses being issued?
They don't have all the guidelines in place to apply yet, so it'll be June or July is what they're telling us, their best guess right now.
Okay, so we could make changes. We would have time to make changes in May if we wanted to.
We'd have to move quickly, yes.
Quickly, but, okay. So we've talked about retail, but we haven't really discussed the cultivation areas, the agriculture areas.
Right.
Just.
Yeah, I think one of one of the things I hear fairly regularly from my constituents is that they're not, any kind of, warehousing or distribution center type buildings are not something that they really necessarily want to see, especially in, previously owned farmland areas. And I don't know whether these cultivation facilities would look something like that. I would assume it would be something to that nature. I'm not like an expert on that. So I think we need to get more information on that to understand that better.
Austin, I've got a question for you. And I know in an agricultural zone, we don't get a lot of design and review. We don't get to say what the materials are probably. So in our ag zones, if a cultivator, a grower came in there, would they just be able to put up a metal building to do their growing, or?
Well, it's a commercial use, and so the design review regs aren't limited just to commercial zoning. And so,
Okay.
For instance, a country store in the A zone is still a commercial use and be subject to design regs, but even though it wouldn't be commercially zoned, and so.
Okay, so we could control what the buildings look like?
Sure, like a school would, yeah.
Okay. Did that help at all, Alderman Piper?
It does in some ways, because it means that you're not just going to have like a greenhouse most likely out there. So it would have to be something that's more substantial than that and have to be secure, because that's one of the thoughts in my mind is that the less secure the building is, the more likely it would be as like a target for criminal activity. So you'd certainly want to have like a good facility out there. But on the other side of that, I think you're going to have people drive by and see a brick box out there and not think it's necessarily aesthetically pleasing, or whatever. Are you going to have development that comes around it? It may just be seen as a deterrent for development in the future, to have a neighborhood or to have other commercial opportunities by it. I don't know. I mean, I think there's just a lot in the air as far as that goes.
But I think some of the webinars and stuff I would listen to, the state gonna control those facilities and buildings anyway, because they're gonna be, because of the processing and everything. You ain't talking about no greenhouses, because they're gonna be monitored, inspected, and checked it too. So you're talking about something substantial. They ain't talking about no, just throwing up a building. It's gonna be substantial, according to the webinar. I ain't no expert neither, but it's gonna be some guidelines from the state. Also, some is already there. And I think the biggest thing to me, like I said, I think the citizen, when I said the citizen, we're talking about the citizen of the state of Mississippi has spoken loudly. I think, overwhelming.
Yep.
And it's kind of amazing, but I have not received no negative call. I have received positive emails from the spectrum of people about move forward, and it's from all walks of life. That's what I've received. I haven't received nothing negative. And this cross the city, not only in Ward 2. This was citywide that I received text and email from.
I think we have some citizens here that want to speak. If there's anyone that wants to speak, you can come up one at a time, state your name, address, and speak as briefly as you can to get your point across.
Shannon Robinson, 135 Boone Drive here in Hernando, Mississippi. To answer some of your questions about security, the rules and regs came out today for the dispensaries and so forth, and honestly, no offense, I could come into the city hall, the police department, everything else before you can get in these buildings with the regulations they put up. It is, a lot more than I thought it was going to be. So people, you're not going to have a greenhouse. It all has to be an indoor grown. There's specifications of how it has to be built, vented. Joe Blow just isn't going to put up a building. They won't regulate that. And of course, the ATF under the IRS direction will be the ones that handle and facilitate all this as far as the markers of the building, the specs. It all has to be approved. It'll have to be approved through city and the county, just like anything else. It's not going to be Billy Bob's backyard barn looking thing by any means at all. And the security on it, like I say, when you get all the regs and regulations, you see the security, it's going to look like something in a military installation. And I mean, it is, again, way more than what I thought it would be. It's very, very intense, and they're taking it very serious, and they're not playing around with it. As far as that goes, the security will be more than taken care of, and I understand what you were talking about. If somebody sees it, maybe try to, dash and cash, so to speak, steal, but no, not the way they've got this stuff set up. And I agree that there needs to be some form to it, almost like if you go to Germantown or Franklin, Tennessee, everything is uniform, has to be a certain color, certain brick, and I think that needs to be done. And that would fall upon the city to take care of that.
We've got pretty strong design guidelines that would handle most of that. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir, Mr. Reedy.
Got documents everywhere, sorry. Some of them are on the phone and some of them are here, so. George Reedy, 175 East Commerce, Hernando, Mississippi. I think I've already spoken to everybody tonight, except Ms. Lynch came in. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight. It may be a poorly held secret, but I'm representing a big investment group that's financial-based, medical-based, that's going to invest and has the intent to invest in the city limits of Hernando on a piece of property that we already have an option on in the appropriately designed, zoned area already, not for just a dispensary, but for a corporate headquarters and for a medical research facility. It would be a small amount of grow if we can arrange it correctly in the zoning for a small grow, which is not very big. I'm not sure the exact final design has been a few thousand square feet, but that would be used for medical research, right? In the city of Hernando, this is a group that is, and I've been authorized to do this because this was put on the agenda and came up this early. Could I hand?
Yes, please.
So this is the bios of the leadership group for Southern Biomedical Industries.
We can just pass them down, George.
Okay.
Yeah.
Southern Biomedical Industries is a Mississippi-based biomedical research and development company dedicated to creating life-changing plant-based medicines based on medical research for treatments of neurological issues, psychological issues, pain issues, and pain management issues, and some addiction issues. All the research is being done on all that, and this what will be the intent of this facility. The facility is going to be, I think it's all right to disclose, I have the property owner's permission. There's an option on Cal Wilkins property up on I-55 up there near the way station on the west side. And so this is an artist rendition. These people are far along, right? They're serious about it. This is an artist rendition of the type of headquarters that we're talking about. This is going to be a major impact on the community. It's an opportunity for Hernando to get back some of the biomedical community that originally went to Memphis is intending to move back to DeSoto County because of the Methodist and Baptist hospitals moving down here. These people are associated with major medical research facilities, major hospital chains, some universities. They're experienced in the banking industry, the financial industry, and they also, as you can see from that resume sheet there, the main people involved, the main players that they have been involved in this industry in other states and are now here in this part of the country. Right? So I think it's an opportunity for Hernando to grab some of that and have some of that biomedical research, not just this, but maybe we can attract, if we start with this, maybe we can attract other biomedical research and medical facilities down into Hernando instead of all being on the northern part of the county. And one of the attractions is, quite honestly, because of our location, because of the location of this property, because they we're looking at other places, other spots, and they have the opportunity to go other spots. We're talking about a facility that's going to create around 80, 85 jobs, going to create around $4.5 to $5 million economic impact on the community. It'd be about a 3-year development plan. And just to answer the question right now that you would have, would there be a dispensary here? Yes, because there would have to be a dispensary once they are approved by this board after adopting the zoning, the licensing, and the planning regulations. Because you need a dispensary there in order to dispense the medicines to the people that are participating in the trials. Because again, I want to emphasize that this is a medical research-based business. That's where the long term is of this business. It's not in the instant necessarily dispensaries, and we just want the city to know, to be clear, that that's what we have on the table here. And you want a group like this that's leading this area for you, I believe. I would just submit to ladies and gentlemen here that, this group is a professional, medically focused leadership group of this new industry. And this is the kind of group we want to be in front of this industry in our area. And you can't lead from behind doing that. And I don't need to tell y'all, because y'all have been hearing about this for 2 years now, and you've seen all the things out of the legislature, and everybody's got lobbyists working, and associations are working on all these things. But it's imperative to get in the front and be on the front side of this. You don't want to be on the back side of this. And so delays in being able to start the project and the planning for this facility in Hernando would be very detrimental. And honestly, we take a chance we'd lose it to another location that has not delayed. And I know there's nothing formal on the agenda tonight, but I just wanted to present to everybody the opportunity we have and the professionals of this group that we have that's interested in coming and working and being part of the Hernando community. Can I answer any questions for anyone?
Thank you, Mr. Reedy.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
First, I'd like to thank Mayor Johnson and the board for letting me speak here tonight.
Certainly.
My name is Roy Ridgway, and I live on 2475 Scout Road in Hernando. And I'd first like to discuss the opportunity presented to us in this pharmaceutical sector of the medical cannabis industry. I'd like to talk about some of the pros and cons of the industry. This is a opportunity for the city, and there's been much discussed about the positives and negatives of the industry over the past 2 years since this has started. The economic benefits to the city will be significant. There will be high-paying jobs, technical, high-tech jobs, which some professionals like engineers that will move here or are from the community already. But others will be high-paying, skilled labor jobs, hired directly from the community and given on-the-job training in this medical industry. Our planned small micro cultivation facility projects 15 such jobs in the first year alone, and our proposed processing facility, a ground-up startup, is projected to employ another 10 highly technical operators and chemists in a laboratory environment. This is in addition to the handful of professionals, accountants, and administrative and legal personnel that also need to be employed to support the industry. The taxes and growth to the city that the high-tech business implies, we project our sales alone to be 10 to 15 million, from which sales tax alone would produce, I understand, about 200,000 for Hernando at an 18.5% sharing ratio for the sales tax. And the excise tax of 5% is unclear how that would be shared. It goes into the general fund, but the share for the localities is unknown. A lot has been mentioned here and covered, so I'll skip over several things here that I wanted to discuss. But this growth industry, Mississippi can expect sales to build to $200 million in the startup period, and possibly $1 billion in a few years, if based on the other performance of other states that have instituted a plan like this. So it's a significant economic benefit. And if you do not opt out, there is very much to grow in this industry for Hernando and the city here. As far as zoning, that's another consideration. I just heard that the Mississippi Attorney General has just recently issued an opinion that cities are allowed to be more specific in the zoning for their business. I think that came out just here in the last few days.
On that Attorney General opinion,
yeah,
do you have a number, or is there a number on that, or is there any? Sometimes they'll have an opinion number or something.
I have just read that came out in the.
Okay.
And I think the commercial appeal, the details, I just saw that today.
Okay.
We'll do some research on it.
All right.
Also, I'd like to point out that as far as security and the crime issues, that the state is requiring a computerized system that every business that tracks all cannabis products, called the Seed to Sale software database. Each plant at approximately 6 inches tall will be tagged with an RFID tag. This will be tracked with a unique ID number and tracked through the grow, processing, and sale to the end customer. The product will be tracked constantly every time the location changes, even inside the facility. The lot number on every patient's medicine bottle will be able to track that back to the individual plant from which the medicine came from. So the tracking, as instituted by the state, will be very detailed. I'm just trying to hit the high points briefly here. Also, I just want to mention out, if you do decide to opt out, even if the jurisdiction opts out, 500 signatures on a petition will force the jurisdiction to run a referendum. And we need to remember that 75% of the voters approve this, and over 90% of the state legislators voted to approve the bill. So the voters in Mississippi and Hernando want this program. And why do we want to enter this industry? We're in an economic uncertain time now. With inflation here and recession on the horizon, the cannabis business in various states have shown that the industry has done well during difficult economic times. We started in December of 2020 planning, designing, facility, and preliminary building preparation until the Supreme Court overturned the bill. As I mentioned, this is a technical business. As chemical, electrical, software, and process engineers, my son's a chemical engineer, we have designed equipment to grow and process medical cannabis over the last year and a half. We'd also like to manufacture and supply this equipment in the rapidly growing market, but the only way for an equipment manufacturer in this industry to provide equipment is to be a grower and processor due to the legal restrictions limiting access to medical cannabis for research, product development, and manufacturing. The only way is to be a licensed cultivator and processor in the industry. We have previously prepared our building in Horn Lake, which is opt out, so we are now looking for another location. And being from Hernando, I sure would appreciate it if we have a chance to do a cultivation and processing facility in this area. I think it would be a benefit to the community and the business and the city as far as revenue and job opportunities for the future of the residents in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgeway.
Okay.
Anyone else like to speak on this topic? Any other comments from the board?
I have a couple questions. Maybe it's for Mr. Pittman, what is the regulations for somebody, maybe out of state, coming down to purchase medical marijuana?
Well, they'd have to have a card from Mississippi.
Can they get one, I guess, if they're not a resident, I guess? Or?
You could obtain a card, but you can't twice a year. Only temporary was for like, I think it was only twice a year that we did it.
So I guess that's half fine.
There you go. And my question for that, we know the city of Horn Lake has opted out. I think there's a strong possibility maybe the city of South Haven opts out, and maybe DeSoto County. So we're kind of going to be that next stop on Highway 55 coming out of Tennessee. So we have to keep that in mind, that we may be I think at one time we were the wedding capital of the world. We may be the marijuana capital of the world. So.
I can tell you that they found a very, very open loophole in the Arkansas.
Oh, I understand, but you can just run down to 55 twice a year and get whatever. I mean, I did have a lot of concerns with the dispensaries until the regulations, which I think came out. I read them this afternoon, and they answered a lot of my questions.
Just the amount is very tight. It's a low limit compared to other states that have already been doing this.
Yeah, it's very low. It is literally going to be for the people. Yeah,
you don't get far side of this. The streets, the five right there is going. This is the way they set it up. It's going to be really hard. That to be cost effective.
Can I make a suggestion? It sounds like I think we're going to opt out, it doesn't seem like, but could we maybe form a committee or a work group to kind of get some regulations in place before maybe an alderman or two, and then.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we want to make sure we're doing it properly.
And in that, would it be, so would that, as part of that, is that hours of operation and some of those other parts of that?
There's some, and I think security requirements for the employees. I mean, it answered a lot of the questions I had. And
And this, if I can, all the employees, you have to go through a state education. You can't just pop up and say, hey, I want to work here.
Right.
The background checks, it's.
You can't be convicted of a felony.
No, I mean, it's like going to work for the government somewhere. Like, I mean, it's really, I haven't been able to go through all the regs and regulations because I just got them today. But just like Alderman Wicker was talking about, it's very detailed. And anybody that's going to work there, and let's say that something happens and somebody messed up, $20,000 fine.
Okay. Mr. Reedy, I saw you raise your hand. If you want to come back. Yeah.
Old politician, I can't resist the microphone. So I just wanted to address Alderman Wicker on some of these things, right? Because he's law enforcement, and he's well aware, and I think everybody was. I was circuit judge for a long time, so I understand your concerns, Mr. Wicker, but and I will just say that I've tried to skim through this 400 pages, but this is probably the most regulated industry, or going to be the most regulated industry ever in the state of Mississippi. And there's so much on the background check, so much on security, so much on requirements, and you've seen like I said, you looked at the regulations. It honestly redresses most of that. I can understand the concerns about the dispensaries, but the reason I wanted to encourage my clients to go ahead and let you know about what we were trying to do was, if you don't opt out, you can be on the front of this and have a leadership group that's associated with physicians and medical research, and you try to get as many dispensaries, because you're going to have dispensaries, and they're going to be limited by the zoning and by the distances, and there's other consideration for the city that they may be able to do some limitations on the number, right? But you push for dispensaries that are physician associated, right? So that's something you'd have the option to do. But I understand your concerns coming from law enforcement, but having been effectively part of that system for 25 years before it went back into private practice, I really do feel like it's addressed. I wouldn't be standing up here representing a group or somebody on something that I thought was going to be a detriment to my community, because I've often told the mayor and a lot of y'all in private conversations, you know, my mother grew up here and said Hernando was a great place to live. My grandfather grew up here and said it was a great place to grow up. My mother said it was a great place to grow up. I say it was a great place to grow up. My daughter and my son say it was a great place to grow up. And I don't want anything to hurt that, right? So I just think the concerns are taken care of by so much regulations. So I feel good about it, and don't really want to pass up a major business opportunity for our headquarters and a research facility in our community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Wicker, to your point, I think we've recently found out that when we form these committees, we're going to have to hold our committee meetings in public, which is great. It makes us be as visible as we can to the public. But if we want to go ahead and form one, since the time is of the essence, maybe we could go ahead and set the first meeting of our committee.
Sure.
So we could not let it fall by the wayside. We formed another couple of committees, and I have gotten busy and have not called meetings, and we don't have the time to let this one lapse, so we would need to do that.
Good with that.
Yeah.
Anybody want to be on the committee?
I
don't mind
certainly
doing
would.
it. Huh?
I mean, I'd certainly be happy to serve on that committee.
I think you need to look at, not on the board, but I think we need to make sure that we include,
That's
our planning department. need to
Chief
be
police,
there.
I would think.
You know, maybe police department, our attorney. And then, at the same time, you don't want too big a committee. I mean, you know,
Like a church committee, don't get anything done, right?
now you said if you want something to fail, form a committee.
That's right.
Yeah. But I do agree that the attorney, the police chief, and the planner would be key.
Yeah, I mean, you know
and I think I heard Alderman Piper and Alderman Wicker volunteer. Do we have a third alderman that would like to be part of that? And of course, I will be on it.
Two probably enough, man.
Okay.
I mean, you
I
know,
will help unless someone else wants to.
I think two's enough.
Or two is fine. I don't.
Okay. And they will be public working meetings, so anybody that wants to come and watch the process will be great. So when could we get this committee together for y'all?
Well, I think we'll let you email it out so we can.
You'll email it out so we'll move on?
With this meeting.
Okay. And we will, when we email it out and get the first date set, we will make that public on our Facebook pages. Everybody pay attention to that. So.
We'll share it.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on to the next item? Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is the noise ordinance discussion.
Green tea.
Oh, I'm sorry, the next one is Green Tea Road. So I've done some talking on this issue. Yeah, if anybody needs to leave, doesn't want to stay around, y'all feel free to go on. So we know that the bids came in about $1.5 million over on Green Tea Road. Stephen Pittman and I made a phone call along with Jim Flanagan to the AWG attorney. We asked the attorney if it was okay if we put this off, if that was one of our options. The attorney listened to us, and he's going to get back to us. In the meantime, Darrell Dixon with the Planning and Development District has called me again. He is exploring some other options. He feels like he might could get us $400,000 or $500,000, not $1.5 million, but get us some more money. He's working on that. I've talked to Mike Foster, who's the engineer on the project. He thinks we should just table it again and keep seeing what happens and wait on AWG to tell us what they really need. The reality is trucks can drive on Green Tea Road right now. It's not going to hurt Green Tea Road. It's not going to slow their business down. So we think we'll get a good response back from AWG to let us extend this out some time to come up with other financing options, possibly even wait long enough so that the price of oil goes down. But another thing that came to my mind over the weekend that I voiced to the AWG attorney is that MDOT has hired Neil Schaefer Engineering to design an intersection at Green Tea and 51. Well, anytime they do an intersection, it goes 150 feet, 200 feet into the limits of the additional, or the existing roads. So we could literally be paving 150, 200 feet of green tea and then them tear it back up. So we need to be working with MDOT as we do this project. So there's a lot of reasons for us just to table it and wait to see what AWG says and not accept those bids. They were good for 60 days from the time that we accepted, or that we looked at them. So we got about another month left. So I think we wait another couple weeks, we can bring it back up at the next meeting, see where we are, and talk about it again. And but we may end up putting it off. If AWG is amenable to it, I would think we should put it off for a year or so if they'll let us, and then just rebid it and go that way.
Table it to the second meeting in May, is that?
That sounds great. You want to make that motion?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you were talking about
Is that date?
Daryl can get us a little more funding, is that in the form of a loan or a grant?
He was trying to get a grant.
Okay.
Yes, he was. Well, our loan capacity through the CAP loan is more than exhausted.
Yeah.
They only do 2.5, and somehow they increased ours to 3.19, but they're not going to increase the loan anymore.
Okay.
Alderman Miller.
Yeah, other thing I was gonna say, and anytime, and yield to my attorney again, and Joe Frank and the mayor, anytime you have a signed MOU, that's a legal binding document.
That's right.
Now, regardless of, and I know attorneys do not tell a falsehood. Everything attorneys say is correct. I don't think they do that. I've seen them in court. But anyway, though, when they're in a meeting, and he might say that he's going to give us enough 6 months, but if you got an MOU in there saying that you required to do this by a certain date, I would like to have something else in writing saying that this is a standard per agreement between AWG and the city.
Yeah, our request to them was to redo the MOU. So we would be doing signed documents if we get to that point. Good point. Yeah. Okay.
I agree with everything been said. I just want to make sure that we get something
Get it in writing.
from them.
Yeah. And when I entered the conversation, I acknowledged to their attorney that this is a promise from the city of Hernando to do the road, and it's in writing, and we know it's a promise. We're not trying to get out of that promise just due to extenuating circumstances. We're asking them to let us have a little more time.
Hold on agreement.
Anybody like to make that motion to?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to table this item until the May 17th meeting of the Board of Aldermen.
A second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion is tabled. Next is the discussion of the noise ordinance. The chief and the attorney and I met and we discussed the noise ordinance and some problems we had been having. Chief, would you like to present what we came up with and kind of putting you on the spot?
So what we discussed was we identified two issues in the ordinance. The first being that essentially every day there has to be a warning. So if we go tonight and there's, we get a complaint, first off, we have to give them a warning. Then when we go back, then we can issue a citation. The second thing that we realized was an issue with the ordinance is there's no regulation on the indoor entertainment. So we give a warning. If they move it inside, then there's no regulation as it pertains to the time, the noise level from indoor entertainment. So I know some of you had asked for some of the data since the noise ordinance went in place. I sent that to you. I've worked with Austin extensively on this on weekends when there are issues. We get noise complaints everywhere in the city since the noise ordinance went into effect. I believe it's like 54. 11 of them have been at Uncle Bubba's because of their music. In every occurrence, we have to go give them a warning. I don't know if you guys remember the first time this came up, the representatives from Uncle Bubba said, well, wait, we didn't get our warning. So every time I pull you over for speeding, I don't give you a warning and say, if I catch you again today, then I'm going to write you a ticket. It was, out of our meeting, it was our recommendation to take out the warning wording, leave that to the discretion of the police department if we need to cite them. Now, if we have a new business or whatever, we would do everything that we could to provide them with the noise ordinance, to explain what the ordinance is of the city, and that essentially would be their warning. But we should not be having to come back day after day after day. Some of the stuff that I've heard, originally, the police department's not doing anything. The police department is doing everything that we can, but because the warning is in there and the way that it reads per day, essentially, we give them a warning, and then they're moving it inside, closing the doors, and then playing past the 11, and that's going, till I think they close at midnight. I have the data for those of y'all who did not receive it. If you have any questions about times when we got called, actual calls there, because I know that, and I spoke with Austin, and he said that some people are just not calling because they don't think anything's getting done. And then on the other side of it, from an enforcement standpoint, we don't have the staff to stay at one business on a Friday and Saturday night because of music. We've got other stuff that we need to be taken care of. So it's my recommendation, if the board so chooses to, and I know Mr. Pittman has he's got something drafted to support us in our mission to enforce this ordinance fairly, but to take out the warning and also to allow for our indoor entertainment to mirror what our outdoor entertainment is as far as the time frame. Now, what we have noticed, and I had a administrative staff member there last weekend in the street, when they moved it inside, it never got above the 75 decibels, but you still can hear it. And so when people are trying to sleep at 11:30 and 11:45, when it's indoor entertainment, it's becoming an issue.
So you're still getting calls after 11 once they've moved it indoors?
Yes, ma'am, we have. At least on one occasion, which was last weekend.
Mayor, I'd like to ask the report that the chief pulled on that data to be included in the minutes of the meeting.
Certainly. We can do that. Okay. Thanks for the recommendation, Chief. Now, I concur with the recommendation after our meeting the other day. I know there are some citizens here that want to speak. If y'all could each come up, as those of you that want to, and speak your piece as briefly as possible.
All right, Austin Wilson, 3242 West Harlan Drive. So I think I'm going to be brief and let these people talk who have actually been dealing with this for so long. I think one of the biggest notes to make about this situation is, I think we've been before you guys, this may be the 5th time that we've been here. This has been a reoccurring issue for almost 2 years. Almost 2 years. We've dealt with 2 different administrations on the same problem, and the same problems are persisting to this day. So let me kind of back up and explain what's happened since it went into effect on October 21st. So we were approaching the winter, obviously. November was upon us and the cold weather was here, and that pushed the music inside. Okay, so we thought the noise ordinance is working. This is terrific. Everyone was happy through the winter. It was pretty darn good. They could still hear it, but everybody was content. Well, we were unfortunately wrong. Lately, the last few months, we've had some nice days, and we're back at square one. So it's, You know, we have the videos of all of it. We've documented everything. You know, so nice weather equals loud music, and we're back to where we were before we had an ordinance, and louder. So here's three things that happen when the police are called. One of three things can happen. So I call the police on Friday night at 9 o'clock. The police arrive, the band conveniently stops for a break. All right. Police takes a reading, the band's not playing. Police leave, rightfully so. The band starts back up. That's one instance. Another instance is the band is playing, I call the police, they issue a warning, and the way the ordinance is written, the residents, they thought that they had already been given a warning, and they thought they were being cited. Well, they've been given a warning, the police leave, the band starts back, the residents are confused because they thought they were cited, and they just continue to play. So they're starting to become frustrated, and there's no faith in, you know, the police were doing their job all along, but they begin to lose faith in calling because they thought that nothing was being done. And then the third thing that could happen is the band goes inside after being given a warning, and it's still it's extremely loud. Mr. Worsham, I talked with him for an hour last Saturday night. It's something I hate to do is call him, but it's, you know, again, it's been that bad of a problem for the residents. His administration on site said, you know, the band's inside, it's under the decibel level, but it's still extremely loud. It's, you know, he said annoying with a few more adjectives, I believe was the exact words. But so I would like even for you guys to consider the decibel level as well. Obviously, we want to make these two changes that he recommended, but the level, seriously, it's still, even at 75 when they go inside, that the way that noise carries, and I think Scott can testify to that, is it's still extremely loud even at 75. So all that being said, the ordinance, you know, unfortunately it's being manipulated by the business, it's being abused, and they're ignoring it. They're taking, you know, every avenue to get around it, every loophole they can find. One of the most unfortunate parts is Miss Neal, who's been a wonderful woman and to get to know, and a wonderful resident at Ivy. She moved here from Oxford. You know, she saw a lot of value in Hernando. She relocated here from Oxford, another wonderful community, to live here, and she's leaving. You know, she's leaving Hernando because of this problem. You know, I don't think any of us should be okay with that. You know, that's I mean, you got people leaving over this. So now the problem I face is, now that she's gone, I wouldn't rent it to any of y'all, knowing what's going on. That's not right for me to do. Okay, so knowing what goes on 30 foot from that bedroom, I'm not just going to rent it to someone else and say, you know, good luck. We're not going to do that. Dale's lived here for 50 years. I grew up here. We're proud of Hernando, but you know, this is not the Hernando that we're proud of. What's happening is absolutely ridiculous, and it's time for some accountability to be given to the business. So we're asking to clamp down a little bit. That's what we're asking for tonight. They're disrespecting the entire historic district, and they're disrespecting you and the ordinance that you put in place. They're challenging everyone. So that's my spiel, and gonna give it to these residents.
Thank you, Austin. Anybody else like to speak?
I'm Virginia Neal. I lived at 2365 Memphis Street for almost 2 years. I've been a single mom for 30 years. I raised my children, worked hard to provide them with a family home, educated them, did everything I possibly could to be the good leader of the family. As I approached 60, I decided that it was time to do something for myself. So I sold the family home, helped my kids to buy their first home, bootstrap their businesses, and I did something that I hadn't done in a long time. I moved. I moved from Oxford to what I thought was going to be my retirement home. And I thought, I'll take all the money that I have invested in homeownership and taxes and yard upkeep, and I'll be free. And I can travel, and I can babysit my grandchildren, and I won't have to take care of a yard. And all of the money that I spent in that, I can put in an investment account and save, and for work another 10 years. I work in Memphis. Then I'll be able to retire, and I'll have a solid plan. Well, when I'm a product designer and an interior designer, and when I saw these patio homes, I just got shivers all over. They were so well built, so well done. I've never seen a small unit like that anywhere, and I have looked in many places. I've looked in Germantown, I've looked in Collierville, I looked in Oxford. It was everything I wanted. It was 2 bedrooms, 1 level. Even though it was small, it felt large. It had beautiful construction. It had beautiful amenities. I was so happy. I was so happy. Well, needless to say, my dream and my retirement plan went to hell in a handbasket. I've been vilified by Uncle Bubba's. I've been singled out. I've been humiliated in court. I've been disrespected by the police. I've been ignored by the first administration of Hernando completely. And I'm not the only one. I'm just a person who wanted to enjoy her older years. The music is so loud, there was absolutely no way that I could stay in that house. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I now have to take medication for situational anxiety. I have a nervous condition. My productivity at my job has suffered. I have to have surgery on Monday for a deteriorating eye condition that was caused by shingles, which was caused by nerves. I'm constantly tired. I'm irritable. I'm short with people. And I stay on edge. And the music at Uncle Bubba's brings out a visceral response in me. So I had no choice. And I want to cry, and I'm very sad. I moved yesterday. And they talk about moving the music indoors, but all they do is move the band up 3 feet, raise a garage door, which is no different than the plastic draping that's behind them on the outside. It's no different. It's no different. We've had members of the band last weekend tell us that they know that this amplified music is not acceptable, and they've asked to play acoustic. Members of the band sometimes say they don't want to play outside because it's very hot, and sometimes in the winter it's very cold. But Uncle Bubba's has weaponized this now. And now, not only am I facing mental and health problems, but I'm facing financial problems as well. I no longer have a home. I no longer have a retirement plan. I'm starting over again at 62. And I am speaking tonight because I feel for the neighborhood, and I know that it's not just me, and I know that you can hear it all the way up the street at the Rafferty's house. I know you can hear it at the funeral home. I know you can hear it up at Memphis Street. I know there have been wedding receptions that have been disrupted. And I don't understand, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, I don't understand why the city of Hernando, you have citizens like Austin and Dale Wilson who offer so much to this community. In the form of Ivy, a wonderful place. If you want to be the Germantown of DeSoto County or the Oxford of DeSoto County, why do you let things like this happen? Why do you let it go on for 2 years? I mean, if Uncle Bubba's business is contingent upon people playing rock and roll music and selling alcohol after 10 o'clock, they're not a restaurant. They're a honky-tonk. Why do you want that for your city? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
I'm Meg Anderson. I moved to Hernando in February of 1980 when I married my husband, Jim Anderson, who I think moved here in 1971. So we've been here for a while. And in 2020, my husband was no longer able to throw pottery, and he was no longer willing to keep up 4 acres. So we sold our home and moved to 2345 Memphis Street. I want to thank all of you for doing wonderful jobs, because I would hate to be an elected official, but I appreciate that there are people who are willing to do that. And I know that I have emailed all of you at least once. You might not know that that was who did it, but I'm the Meg Anderson that emailed you. Among other things, and with Alderman Wicker, who is from my district, I asked him if having that garage door open was that inside music or outside music, and his reply to me was he thought it was outside music because it didn't get any quieter when the band would move in. I'm not an acoustic specialist, but I do know that glass does not prevent sound. It can promote sound. And when the band, on the few times, and I did, Mr. Mayor, one time get out of my bed and go look to see what they were doing, but that was not a time that I called anybody. And the band was set up and the door was closed, and it was louder on my phone on the decibel that time than when it was raised up. And that is from my research on acoustics, and I might be wrong because I'm not a scientist. The glass vibrates, and the vibration pushes the sound out.
I know our officer who was there last weekend taking readings would just get very different readings depending on where he stood because the sound bounces oddly. And
correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I am one of the people, I have called the police 3 times in my life, and I'm 73. So I'm really old compared to you folks. One was in March of this year, and that was at 9:30 on a Saturday night. And I was told by the dispatcher that nobody could come until 10 o'clock, which I never, and we had this discussion, and I kept asking her questions, and she asked me questions, and I don't know, we must have misunderstood each other. And so she said, I'll send an officer out there. I said, I don't need an officer. She sent an officer out. And I did go and talk to him, and he could hear the music, but he didn't have the decibel reader. He said the lieutenant had the decibel reader, and he was on another call. I said, it's not important. I'm going to put my earplugs in and go to bed. This is too much information, I know. Anyway, 2 Saturdays ago, I did call at 9:30. At that time, the dispatcher told me the policeman had just come back and that the decibel level was over 80, and he had told them to lower it. They said they would, or they would move the music inside, which I guess they did. I went to bed around 10:45, and the music, I hadn't heard any music except very softly until around 10:45, the music started up again. My husband was sound asleep. My husband also, he's a wonderful man, and he used to play a mean banjo, and that's an awfully loud instrument, but anyway. He was asleep, and he takes his hearing aids out, and he doesn't hear anything. So I waited until 11:15, and then around 11:18, I called the police, and they told me there were people in the parking lot, and the music was only 70 decibels, which I didn't understand because I thought that when they said there was no music outside after 11, that would mean even inside music shouldn't be playing at 70. And that is what precipitated me emailing you alone on Monday just to ask if something had changed.
And that kind of brought it to our attention. So that's one of the recommendations we're making to the board tonight, is that whatever times we have set in the ordinance for outdoor music to stop is the same time the indoor music should stop.
and or at least not play so loud. I did feel bad calling the police the 3 times because I do think that the police in Hernando have better things to do than to have to go check on a sound ordinance that I believe probably Mr. Taylor and everybody at Uncle Bubba's or any place else in Hernando knows what it says and knows what the regulations are. And I know that I live in a fairyland where people say, oh, this is the rules, I'm going to follow them. Now, have I ever speeded? Yes. But I also know that I slow down when I see the police car coming behind me, so I think that the band might sometimes play softer when the police comes. I don't know. I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody. We need good restaurants in Hernando. We need entertainment, but we also need to be able to live a good life and be able to hear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again,
Thank you, Ms.
for all
Anderson.
you all do.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I think this situation is outdoor music. I mean, in the time, when it's played outdoors, it's ridiculous. When he's gone indoors, turned it down, it's been tolerable. We can hide it with sound music. We can hear the music over our televisions. And it's 11:30, latest 12 before they're finished. Very often, not just every once in a while, very often. It's been more tolerable when he goes indoors and door down. But 75 decibels indoors, you're harming the people inside. I wouldn't want to listen to a 75 decibel music. Oh, I mean, you wouldn't like it outside your house. I mean, I think it's too high. I think 65 is all it is. And I think it needs to be indoor only. Doesn't need to be outdoor. We're not a concert venue. So, I mean, we've only called a couple of times when it was really ridiculous. We're losing sleep over it. I've lived here for 16 years. My daughter lives here. My grandchildren went to school. Going to go to college around here. And I sold my big house, 4 acres. Moved to a really nice place. Thought I was doing great. Paying more in rent than I ever paid on mortgage. So, but I like the place. It is very nice. It's perfect size. I'm self-employed, okay? I get up every day at 4 o'clock. I can't go to bed till midnight, 3 or 4 nights a week, because it's there. And it's mainly in our bedrooms. They're at the back of our house. And you wouldn't even want 65 decibel music playing in your bedroom when you're trying to go to bed, would you? Would you turn your radio on at 65 decibels in your bed? Because that's what it is in our bedroom. So I think we need to approach the idea whether it's in or out. There really wasn't any definition to that. And I believe Oxford was used very prevalently. I think they've adjusted theirs to where outdoor music is like 45 decibels. And it can't be within so many feet of a home. They rewrote theirs. Worked in Oxford for 5 years, went to a lot of places, listened to a lot of music. I like music. I have a problem with it. I wish I could go over there and eat, because it's real close. I could walk to go have dinner. It's why we moved where we moved. Walk all over. I walk Hernando 4 miles, 6 miles today. I walk this city every morning. Love it here. I like to sleep. I like my wife to sleep. It's affected my wife's health. Her doctor's already told her that. She's got lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. She visited her doctor one day and the doctor said, what's wrong? She told her, she goes, I hope it's temporary. So we do too. We've been fighting it. We haven't called the police a lot. Respect them, don't have a problem. They've all been very nice to me when I've talked to them. But just need to reevaluate that part of it, I think. I'd like to see that reevaluated and rethought about. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments from the board or suggestions?
Since I wrote the proposed the ordinance, I think I would like to say probably made an error of not addressing particular I think that was probably something we should
pay some attention to. First voted on this, I believe most of the thought was they approved it at 10 o'clock, so we made that change. We were left to allow 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday night. That was I think the purpose of the ordinance is to avoid complaints from my residents. Other businesses. So, minimum. You know, cold, being inside and playing so loud.
Well, I don't live near enough that it bothers me, but last weekend, we heard it at our house. And y'all know I live way over by the Board of Education.
Really?
It's loud.
Yeah.
It's loud.
Still out.
So why haven't they been issued a citation?
They generally quieten down when we give them a warning, is what I've been told, but we're trying to fix that.
The last Saturday night, they played till midnight at that decibel. Have they been issued a citation?
I'll have to defer to the chief, I'm not sure.
When they received their warning, then they went inside. When they went inside, it circumvents the outdoor entertainment.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
I think we should seriously consider lowering the decibel level, because, you know, as Mr. Pittman said, from his house on the other side of the dip, he doesn't know whether they're inside or outside. Well, that's a noise level problem. It's not an indoor or outdoor problem. So,
Okay.
What would you recommend that level be?
at least,
65?
yes, sir.
I'd just like to say, thank you for your patience. When we put this ordinance in place, we did it knowing that there were going to be some changes probably down the road that were going to be required. We looked at ordinances from other cities and tried our best to put an ordinance together that was fair for everyone. But once again, we anticipated that we were going to miss something, that the decibel level may or may not be where it should be, and that as we got into this, we would be in a position to fine tune it. That's where we are tonight. So I hope you'll, as you deal with your frustrations, I hope you'll understand that we tried to put our best foot forward when we put the ordinance in place. And I think we hear you loud and clear that now it's time for some adjustments. So thank y'all and be patient with us. I'm sorry?
I said I hope more people don't have to.
As do I. I hate that for you. I hate that for you, and I'm sorry that's where you ended up. And, you know, we played a hand in that, but we didn't do it on purpose to have you face what you've been through, I assure you.
So does the board have any discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion whenever we're ready.
The board feel confident in accepting a motion now? Y'all through with discussion?
Can I say one thing?
Yes, sir, Mr. Wilson, you haven't spoken
I'm in
yet.
various businesses, and if I violate my license, they're taken away. If Austin violates his contractor's license, he's fined regularly, or the license taken away. This guy is a pooch. He does damn well what he pleases, when he pleases, and he's made a fool out of all of us. And it's really time that we stop the crowd and get on to business so these people can have a life. Miss Jenny paid $375,000 to get out of her problem. That's insane.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Hey.
Is there any more
Steve,
discussion from the board?
I need to ask Steve something. On the outdoor entertainment, okay, of course, it says 10 p.m. on between the hours of 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, that's 11. We adjusted that.
That's changed, that's correct.
All right, now,
I apologize.
what about the outdoor entertainments allowed Monday through Thursday between the hours of 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. and on Sunday, 1 to 9? Are those the accurate times?
Those are accurate times. The only time,
So it wasn't 10 p.m. during the week, it was 9.
it is,
But I thought,
it's 9 o'clock on Sunday, 10 o'clock.
right, and it's 10 on Monday through Thursday. All right, so that needs to be adjusted in this paperwork when in
No,
motion.
That's correct, the way it's stated. The only thing different is the 10 o'clock
Friday
on
and
Friday and Saturday. This is just the old, when I sent it in for the agenda, I just printed it off.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
So it's 9 on Sundays and 10 during the week?
Correct. 9 o'clock on Sunday, 10 on Monday through Thursday.
Monday through
11 on
Thursday is 10.
Friday and Saturday, which was
10.
adjusted from 10 o'clock up to 11 after the first commission.
So that's the whole copy.
And then Friday and Saturday.
Midnight at 1 on Saturday,
There.
and then we have it at 1 o'clock on Sunday until 9 o'clock on Sunday. So there's no afternoon out, there's no rest. And we first moved in at 9 o'clock. It would gotten worse for us. Instead of
Okay.
11, it's midnight.
Alderwoman Ross, do you have the answers you needed from the attorney?
Yeah, I wanted to tweak that, just to be sure when the motion's made, that the accurate time, so we don't mess this up as far as where we had already amended.
Correct. That 10 o'clock has been amended once to 11. 10 o'clock on Friday and Saturday.
On the weekends, okay.
On Friday and Saturday.
Friday and Saturday.
Well, we're going to do our best to enforce whatever this board passes. A couple, just on the weekends.
Just the weekends.
No, it's 9 during the week.
Yeah.
Are you sure it's,
That hasn't changed. I think they're saying that he used to just go till 9. Now he goes to 10 sometimes during the week.
okay, so the ordinance is 9,
Yeah, the
Monday
ordinance
through
is 9.
Thursday and on Sundays.
It's 10.
Yeah.
He said
No,
it's 10.
No, the ordinance is 9, but he's just playing after.
No.
No, no.
No,
The ordinance is 10 o'clock Monday through Thursday.
right.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's what I wanted to confirm before anything, because this was older and we had already amended.
That's correct.
But I think they're saying that
Regardless, he's not stopping.
He now has extended
he is,
hours.
he is playing later than what.
Well, he's not abiding by
Whatever
anything.
time the ordinance is, he's passed it.
So that's, yeah, we all are, we all know that. We just want to be sure that we're making the right recommendations based on the accurate noise ordinance.
Correct. And just another observation is that outdoor music hasn't really cranked up yet. We have been in the winter months.
Right.
There were other individuals on our side of 51, on the east side of Highway 51, who had serious complaints about the noise. And some of them are going through cancer treatments and things like that. And it is a problem. Now, they may not come up here all the time and call all the time, but it has been a problem.
We're just the closest.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's vilified because it's in my budget.
Was someone ready to make a motion to help us solve this problem?
First, I think it's important to go on the record that, we're talking about Mr. Terry's business, and he was advised of this meeting and chose not to attend.
That is correct. I sent him a text message, and he told me he knew about it and would be out of town.
But I'm ready to make a motion whenever.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to follow the recommendation of the chief of police and the mayor to place the same time and decimal restrictions on indoor entertainment as currently placed on outdoor entertainment, and to remove the warning requirements, leaving it in the discretion of the Hernando Police Department. Also lower the decimal level to 65.
And did you make okay, so you're lowering the decibel limits there, and you're making the times on indoor and outdoor music the same?
My understanding that this is correct. We don't need to make any adjustments in time. Is that?
Well, we did not have an ending time on indoor music.
That's correct.
In the ordinance.
So it would be the same as outdoor music. I think
Okay,
it'd
so
be
we would put an
10
ending
o'clock
time
on the
on indoor
weekend.
music.
I think the motion is, as it's worded on the agenda, with the exception of he's asking to lower it to 65. Same hours on Friday and Saturday night, 11 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
And the police department can make the decision.
Yes, there's no longer a warning. They can issue a citation at the first interaction.
Okay.
So removing the warning.
So your basic motion is item 26 as written, plus
Yeah,
lowering the decibel level to
yes.
65? Right.
For inside and out.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Shame.
We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderman Piper.
Aye.
Alderman Harris.
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Robinson.
Aye.
Alderman Wicker.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ross.
Aye.
And it passes with unanimous vote. Thank y'all for being here to voice your opinions.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the utility docket.
When does that go into effect?
It takes 30 days, correct, Madam Clerk? Okay. There's a motion on the table to approve the utility docket. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Motion goes to closed session.
There's a motion to go to closed session and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. We are now in closed session.